Are you looking for affordable office space in Marion? The Professional Building, located at 685 Delaware Avenue, is the place for you. For more information, call 740-383-6803. Office space is now available. Again, telephone number 740-383-6803. This is Scott Spears, and I'd like to welcome you to Scott Spears Now. Today the guest, multiple Emmy winner Robert Guillaume. Robert, of course, best known for his work on TV's Benson and Soap, has starred in a string of movies, as well as a very acclaimed performance of Phantom of the Opera, touring the country, in which he played the Phantom. But today Robert joins us for a very personal reason, as May is Stroke Awareness Month. In 1998, Robert suffered a stroke while working on the set of TV's Sports Night, and today he will share that experience and hopefully help many of you who are watching this. Before we get to Mr. Guillaume, I do want to read some facts on stroke that I will read during the interview with Robert, but I want to read them now so you get them twice because they are very, very important. Stroke kills almost 130,000 Americans each year. That's 1 in every 19 deaths. On average, 1 American dies from stroke every 4 minutes. Stroke costs the United States an estimated $38.6 billion each year. Stroke is the leading cause of serious long-term disability. African Americans are more likely to die following a stroke than are whites. African Americans' risk of having a first stroke is nearly twice that of whites. Common stroke warning signs and symptoms: some sudden numbness or weakness of the face, arm, and leg, sudden confusion, sudden trouble seeing in one or both eyes, sudden trouble walking, dizziness, loss of balance or coordination, sudden severe headache with no known cause. And this is the most important and maybe staggering fact of the whole thing. Stroke is the leading cause of death in the United States. People of all ages and backgrounds can have a stroke. #1 cause of death. Very important issue. Should be talking about it all the time. Going to talk about it right now with a guy I like a whole lot, Robert Guillaume. This is Scott Spears, and May is National Stroke Awareness Month. Joining us today is legendary Emmy Award-winning actor, star of TV's Benson and Soap, Robert Guillaume. In 1998, Robert suffered a stroke while working on the TV series Sports Night. Robert, so good to have you here.
Thank you very much, Scott.
Looking well. Yeah, looking well as always. I want to read a few facts on stroke before we get into your story. This is from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Stroke kills almost 130,000 Americans each year. That's 1 in every 19 deaths. On average, 1 American dies from stroke every 4 minutes. Stroke costs the United States an estimated $38.6 billion each year. Stroke is the leading cause of serious long-term disability, and the big one, stroke is the leading cause of death in the United States. People of all ages and backgrounds can have a stroke. Interesting facts. Robert, what happened in 1998?
Well, I suffered a stroke, to make it succinct, and for a long time that morning, I was not aware that I was having a stroke. I just thought I, for some reason, couldn't control my limbs and whatnot. But it turned into a stroke after I went to work, and I fell down and couldn't get up, and I had come in to the show for rehearsal, and I fell down and I couldn't get up. And they kept calling me on the phone. Finally, they got me, and they came up to see, and they asked me, what's the matter? Well, come on down, we need you. I said, well, I can't. I'm disabled. And so they came upstairs, and we subsequently went to the hospital, which was a short distance away. And they consulted my doctor and told him what was wrong, and he concluded that I was probably having a stroke. I still didn't understand. I still didn't know. I wasn't that familiar with what I suppose if I had been paying more attention when I first heard about strokes, I would have known. But somehow it just never registered with me.
That day before you fell down at work, had you noticed anything else going on with you?
I think maybe a couple of days in the week prior, I had I don't know, some memory problem, or I couldn't pronounce my words, or slurring or something like that, but nothing to alarm me.
At any point during that, when you were slurring your words a little bit, did you think I maybe should make a doctor's appointment or go to the emergency room?
Of course not. I had never been sick. It just did not occur to me.
Had you seen doctors on a regular basis? Was there any predisposition to it?
No, I didn't see doctors regularly. I didn't have medicines to keep track of or anything like that. I was in what I would call perfectly good health.
I do want to read one more fact here from the Center for Disease Control, because I think this one is kind of important for people to understand. Stroke is the leading cause of death for all Americans, but the risk of having a stroke varies with race and ethnicity. African Americans' risk of having a stroke is nearly twice that of whites. Hispanic Americans' risk falls between that of whites and African Americans. American Indians and Alaskan Natives and African Americans are more likely to have had a stroke than any other group. Moreover, African Americans are more likely to die following a stroke than whites are. What does that say to you, Robert?
It says we're awfully unlucky. Well, it's the one statistic in which we lead. They're so often in citing statistics, we are quite often way behind. But this one we seem to be way in front.
When you got to the hospital that day with stroke, I think people think of speech problems and numbness on one side. When you were brought to the hospital and they discovered they thought you were having a stroke, what was your physical state?
I was alert. I was conscious. I was speaking. I noticed a slight impairment in my speech, but nothing again alarming.
Did you have any after effects that stuck with you?
Yeah, I was disabled on the left side, and not to any great degree. It's always caused me to think, well, maybe I had a not so large stroke.
When you realized you had had a stroke and you were impaired on one side, how did that affect you mentally?
I was, I think, too involved in trying to get to the bottom of things, to be afraid of the future. if that's what you mean. I thought, gee, maybe if I go to the hospital, they will, give me something to stop this decline, because I could feel myself declining, that is, in energy.
Were you able to stop that decline?
Well, they brought me under control, brought my blood pressure down, and put me at ease, and we started doing some tests, an MRI and stuff like that.
One thing I think that's very unique about your story, Mr. Guillaume, is that you were working on a sitcom at the time, Sports Night, and that's a pretty rigorous schedule.
Yeah.
And your speech and your gait had always been so important to you as an actor. When you went back, was there ever any thought to not going back to work?
Well, I did give it some thought, because I wondered how much it would impact my job. And my job always meant everything to me, and especially this particular role, because it was a role that I really admired, and a writer that I really admired, Aaron Sorkin, and it was a cast that I felt very close to, and I was so disappointed at being incapacitated. And so when I began to think about, well, what's my future going to look like, my wife had the idea, my wife Donna had the idea that they should write the stroke into my character, so that if I were to appear impaired by the audience, they would have known why, and we wouldn't have to hide it, and I wouldn't have to walk as though nothing had happened.
Being that you weren't particularly thrilled, as nobody would be, with having a stroke, did you like the idea that your character was now going to have a stroke?
I was relieved, I guess you'd say. I was relieved that we would not have to fake it. I would not have to pretend that I didn't have a stroke.
As you've come back to work, you finished out the series Sports Night and have worked rather extensively ever since, and have done some great voiceover work with The Lion King. Has it ever, do you think, impacted you in getting a job?
Oh, I'm sure it has, Scott. Although no one has ever said anything to me about it. Everything that I've auditioned for since then has taken into account that I had a stroke. And I worked on the movie The Big Fish, and Tim Burton was very nice to me. I had a small role on there as a family doctor. And so, I mean, but it's been, I've led a kind of charmed life, if you will.
It's been 15 years since you had the stroke, Robert. What were, if any, the long-term effects of it?
Well, my left side is, I have reduced usage of my left arm, this one over here, and I walk with the help of a cane. And I guess I'm not aware of how it looks, but that's the extent of my injury.
Robert, you were always a healthy man for the first half of your life, more than half. How did it impact you mentally to have these impairments?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure that I'm so average in that regard. I seldom acknowledge, except I have to move slower and more deliberately now. But from the beginning, I never felt really shortchanged or anything like that. I'm very, I guess, upbeat, you'd say.
How do you stay upbeat? A lot of people, this depresses them. What's your advice to those people who are maybe just going through it? 15 years ago, what's your advice to them?
I don't know. If you caught me earlier in my life, I'm sure I could come up with a lot of things in a rather glib manner about how one handles this sort of thing. But I'm less prone to do that now. I don't really know. I think the more positive you can be about yourself would be my number one admonition. I would say if you can afford to get some outside help, like a trainer, a physical trainer, and do regular exercises, maybe 2 or 3 times a week. That's what I would ask people to do, to feel better about themselves. Because a stroke, I believe, is like anything else that life throws at us. And it's as if life is throwing stuff at us to see how we react.
That's a very, very smart way to put it. That's very interesting. The other side of that, Robert, is what did you do? We talked about the mental side. What did you do physically? Was there a diet change? Was there? Did you exercise before? Did you start exercising after?
I think I started exercising more after the stroke. I began to see the advantages of it. I felt better. I felt better about myself. The exercises, the repetitions seemed to help me. And I think more than anything, it has brought me through this thing without, as I said before, feeling sorry for myself.
You know, Robert, it's so interesting because this is number one cause of death in the United States. I was unaware of that. Why do you think it is the number one? Just an opinion. Why is it the number one cause, do you think?
Because I think perhaps maybe it's that Americans, much like myself, they don't take some of these things seriously. We sort of walk around with the dreaded notion that perhaps we would have one, but as long as we didn't, let's go on as though nothing is happening. I don't know what it is.
Well, I tell you, Robert, before I let you go here, I do want to say something personal, because I think just what you've done for 15 years since you had the stroke, being public about it, going back to work, working to this day, you have really set an example for people. Whether you believe it or not, you have set an example on life goes on after. And it's very nice.
Well, thank you, Scott, for that.
And before I do get on out of here, I do want to say, do you have any projects coming up? I know people love to see you anywhere they can.
I'm doing a book. I'm doing a book with my brother-in-law, John, where he asks me a lot of questions about one thing, and in my answer I range far afield. I guess I'm rather talkative, and it's not that affliction is not abating at any time. I just talk.
Well, we're glad you keep on talking, and as I say, Robert, every time you come on the show, it really is a thrill for me. You're one of my favorite actors, and I'm so glad to see you're doing well and staying well and keeping active and keep on keeping on, as they say.
Well, thank you very much, Scott.
Thank you. The very...
Call me again if you need me.
Yes, the very brilliant, wonderful, and watch out for that book when it comes out by Robert Guillaume. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Scott Spears Now, and it truly could be an episode that saves your life. I am forever indebted to Robert Guillaume for sharing his tale, a very poignant one, but proof that you can go on after a stroke. 15 years later, he's still with us, still working, still as great as ever, mind as sharp as ever. I hope you enjoyed the program. Until next time, this is Scott Spears, headed for the dugout.